Oh, hello there, boys and ghouls. Going into October, players are going to be looking for more horror and suspense gaming experiences, and Game Pass for PC definitely delivers. With some very key horror and suspense games from the last decade making an appearance on the service, here are my picks for the best spooky games on Xbox Game Pass for PC as of the first week of October 2020. I may not have finished all of these titles, but I have played them. Light spoilers for all of these games. Alan Wake by Control developers Remedy Entertainment is a mix of Stephen King-esque literary horror and the atmospherics of Twin Peaks and the X-Files. Alan and his wife escape to the picturesque logging town, renting a cabin on a lake so Alan can squirrel away and write his next book. But things immediately take a turn for the worse as Alan finds that things around the town are starting to resemble the contents of his latest book, which he has no memory of writing. A linear, story-driven experience, the game, which was released in 2010 on Xbox 360 and ported to PC in 2012, plays like most Remedy games. A lot of shooting mixed in with more narrative exploratory elements. Alan Wake is unique, however, in that it has a very specific sense of atmosphere, with a complex but satisfying story at its core. The game leans heavily on metatextual explorations of themes of other works, with references to King's Christine, Maximum Overdrive, and The Shining, while also referencing a myriad of books, movies, and television, often using the elements and references to other stories to further elucidate the elements within its own. It uses suspense as its defining element, relying on a concept of fighting the forces of literal darkness. Alan uses a flashlight to disarm his enemies and firearms to finish them off. The themes of dark and light are explored with depth, slowly revealing more about the supernatural forces threatening our world. With some good set pieces and relying more on a sense of foreboding than jump scares, though there are some, Alan Wake is the perfect game to play on a foggy October evening with a pumpkin beer in hand. Highly recommended. A special note: Alan Wake made his surprise return this August in Remedy's Control, featuring in the final DLC for that game, AWE, after being hinted at in notes and logs in the main game. The events of that DLC have led to speculation that a new Alan Wake game or spin-off is coming soon from Remedy. It's great to have you back, Alan. Next up is a game I'm sorry to say took me a very long time to get to, coming out originally all the way back on the PS3 and 360. Alien Isolation. Developed by Creative Assembly and published by Sega, Alien Isolation is a direct sequel to the original Alien, and only the original Alien. You play as Amanda Ripley, a space engineer working for Weyland-Yutani who has grown up in the shadow of her missing mother Ellen, and the mystery surrounding the loss of the USCSS Nostromo decades earlier. Putting herself near enough the action to find out something about Ripley, Amanda ends up on Sevastopol Station, where a flight recorder from the Nostromo hints at the eventual fate of her mother. Unsurprisingly, a titular alien has found itself aboard the dystopian station as the few locals left alive fight over resources, while the pissed-off androids, the uncanny valley approaching working Joes, try to bash your fleshy skull in. Alien Isolation is a first-person survival horror which stays very true to the roots of the genre. With limited save locations, excellent sound design, limited resources, and near-useless weapons, you feel naked and powerless. Your best tool against getting brained or stuck through the chest with a tail knife is hiding in air ducts and crawl spaces. Alien Isolation goes out of its way to reiterate how powerless you are against the alien and androids. With limited ammo, the chances of taking down a working Joe, at least in the beginning, are slim, and the alien is nigh indestructible. Get ready to die. A lot. The game's graphics capture that late 70s vision of the future to sublime perfection. Drenched in atmosphere and an overwhelming feeling of dread, the game ends up feeling very much like a lost sequel, and is a must-play for fans of the original Alien. It's terrifying. The first time I saw the alien emerge from the ceiling, I realized I'd been holding my breath for nearly a minute. Great spooks, good story, and worthy of the Alien moniker, partially because the franchise has faltered so much over time, I say, check it out. A note on the VR mode. The VR mode announced by the developers early in production never really materialized, but fans did eventually work with some abandoned code from the developers to hack together a working VR mod, and it's fairly comprehensive. But from some searching online, it seems as if the VR mod is incompatible with the Game Pass for PC version.
Come on, Bullet. Let's go find this kid.
Blair Witch came out last year and was a bit of a surprise. Announced as an Xbox Game Pass exclusive a few months before its release, it came completely out of nowhere. Developed by Bloober Team, the studio behind the great horror walking simulators, and VR titles for those that can stomach them, Layers of Fear, a classic but inspired art-infused haunted house story, and Observer, starring the late Rutger Hauer in a Blade Runner-esque cyberpunk crime thriller. Blair Witch is another walking simulator with puzzles, which seems to be Bloober Team's go-to. Playing like a mix of Outlast and Slender, The Arrival, Blair Witch had mixed reviews upon release, but I found it had an incredible sense of atmosphere. In fact, it may be one of the most terrifying gaming experiences I've ever had, up there with Silent Hill 2 and Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Armed only with a flashlight, video camera, and cell phone while accompanied by your trusty canine companion, the game takes inspiration from the Blair Witch franchise's lost time trope. It makes getting lost in the woods at night into its main gameplay mechanic. Taking place in 1996 during a search party for a missing boy in the Black Hills Forest outside of Burkittsville, Maryland, you play as Ellis Lynch, a former cop and soldier of the First Iraq War. Taking place only a few years after the events of the Blair Witch Project, the game fleshes out the woods and setting of the movie. I've always been a fan of the Blair Witch mythos, and this is a good addition to the canon. There is a bit of combat with the witch sprinkled throughout the game, borrowing from Alan Wake's flashlight as weapon against evil gameplay. It's not exactly the main event, but I'd say the atmosphere, sound, and level design add up to an experience that far outshines the poor combat. I think the game is a hidden gem and was unfairly panned last year. It's incredibly obvious that games like this aren't interested in providing the traditional gameplay loops of legacy titles, and they shouldn't be held to that standard. Gamers' ideas of what is and is not a game should evolve to include more varied experiences. Blair Witch may not be worth a full purchase for some, but it's a perfect match for Game Pass, something with a low barrier for entry and won't take up too much of your backlog. For those looking for a short, scary romp through the woods in October, this is right down your veiny, twisted trail. Interestingly enough, a VR version for Oculus Quest and Quest 2 was announced just a few days ago and is coming out on October 29th, with other VR platforms coming later. Check back with my full VR review later this month.
What were you doing here, Sheriff?
It used to be a military base. Well, it used to be a ranching thing, then it was turned into an army thing, then it became a bird thing and a museum or whatever. Henry Fonda stationed here, I think, for a bit, unless he was Navy.
Who's Henry Fonda?
Around Christmas time, this little breakfast place used to sell these amazing polar bear sugar cookies. Man, those were good. And then one year they changed the formula or whatever.
Oxenfree is a supernatural suspense thriller from indie developers Night School Studios. The game was released for PC, Xbox, and PS4 in 2016, and later ported to Switch and mobile in 2017. A side-scrolling adventure that's sometimes akin to something like Monkey Island, the game has a unique flow of dialogue, with statements and choices sometimes interrupting other characters in a way that feels more natural than most dialogue trees in games. It's refreshing and it grounds the plot elements firmly in a heightened but real world. It's very similar in structure, plot, and tone to something like Donnie Darko, a dark and quirky tale about trippy supernatural time and space bending phenomenon on an island just outside the suburbs, with all the angst and emotional fallout that comes with it. The gameplay relies on light puzzle elements, but is more strictly focused on navigating the conversations with your peers, developing and exploring the relationships between these characters that the events of the game help to crack open like an egg. The sound design is of specific mention, creating a haunting, ethereal presence that ebbs and flows, evoking the static that emanates from your radio as you scan radio waves for music from the past and signals from beyond. As you slowly walk and talk from one side of the island to the other, the characters start to encounter a series of time loops, fracturing and distorting their well-constructed teenage reality. Not so much a horror as a tense suspense, the game does have a very intriguing mood and sense of place that takes you back to the scariest times, trudging through the remnants of your hometown, discovering the secrets we keep from each other. A perfect little nugget for Game Pass.
Freaking 4th of July, and I lost track of everybody.
Nona, believe me, that wasn't us.
Hello there. I'd like to offer your team some rewards and some goodwill. That is, if you'll send someone over who can help me with something.
State of Decay 2 Juggernaut Edition. State of Decay 2 is a single-player and cooperative zombie survival game from Undead Labs, an Xbox game studio, formerly Microsoft Studios. State of Decay is an amazing experience for someone who has never tackled the cooperative survival genre. A mix of The Walking Dead and The Sims, it's all about building up your base, keeping your survivors healthy and happy while going on resource runs. The main gameplay loop is absolutely addicting as hell. You'll go out, find resources, kill increasingly more dangerous and larger hordes of Zeds, get back just in time to cure your survivor of the zombie bite, and use the resources to upgrade your base while trying not to attract the ire of your human neighbors. There is a baseline of terror that surrounds the whole experience as your supplies start to dwindle and the hordes get closer. You know you're always one small mistake away from the total upheaval of your carefully crafted order. It deals in that particular dystopian fantasy. What would you do in the zombie apocalypse? It has all of the elements that the genre has built up along the way. Shady militia types, the lone military survivor of a top-secret project, the ever-increasing lethality of more and larger firearms, and the rejuvenation of near-destroyed automobiles into indestructible zombie killing machines. So too does it indulge the sense of recreating society, starting with nary a kitchen, boiling rabbit, eventually upgrading to solar-powered, ethanol-producing sites so you can sell your moonshine to the survivors down the road. Even better is that the devs have been updating this game bi-monthly for 2 years, with more campaign modes, more content, a brand new story-driven campaign separate from the main game, and a multiplayer horde mode that gives unlocks for the main offering. There really is an absurd amount of content and value in this game. The first time I played it on a whim, I ended up sinking nearly 10 hours into the first session. The game really starts to shine, however, when you add friends into the mix. Playing this game with another player really takes this from a good to great experience. It's scary, tense, empowering, and generally a major pillar of what makes Game Pass great. Anyone with Game Pass can jump in and start playing with very little effort. A must play. If you like this video, please subscribe and ring the bell. I'll be making videos about a variety of subjects, but I tend to come back to VR, horror, retro games, and hidden gems, with some Star Trek, Star Wars, and Cyberpunk thrown in for good measure. This is the Virtual Boy, signing out.